Well, I want to keep our Life of a Disciple series going. We're in part 15, and so I've been really enjoying kind of preaching through what is it to be a disciple of Christ, and so this month our emphasis has been on generosity. We believe that God is a generous God, and so He wants His kids to be a generous people, and it's who He's created us to be. And so week 1 of this month, we preached on the tithe, on the importance of bringing 10% to God's house for the work of the ministry. Last week, we talked about just having an overall disposition of generosity, right? We don't just want to be generous in the area of our finances. We want to be generous in every area. We want to be generous in forgiveness with our words and encouragement. We want generosity to flow from the life of the believer. And today, if it's okay, I want to get really practical. We're going to get very, very practical around the area of our finances. And I'm preaching a message that I've been calling today, an aligned budget. You need an aligned budget. And I want to read out of Proverbs chapter 1. And the reason why I'm reading this verse is because sometimes I think if we're not careful, we will think that just because we can't find a specific verse that says a specific thing, we think that lets us off the hook somehow of just living under the divine wisdom that God gives His people, right? And that's not how God, God does not let us off the hook in that way. And I want to read Proverbs chapter 1, verses 20 through 22. This is what it says about wisdom. It says, out in the open, wisdom calls aloud. She raises her voice in the public square. On top of the wall, she cries out. And at the city gate, she makes her speech. And then all of us could probably be indicted with verse 22. It says, how long will you who are simple love your simple ways? How long will mockers delight in mockery and fools hate knowledge? An aligned budget. Come on, let's pray together today over the preaching of God's word. God, thank you so much. God, that everything we have, it's a gift from you. And so, Lord, I pray that you would help us to align our budget with what you value. God, give us freedom in the area of our finances. God, we're grateful for who you are and what you're doing and how you're moving in our life. And we ask you to speak to us today. In Jesus' name, amen and amen. I love how it sets up wisdom, right? It says, out in the open, wisdom calls aloud. She raises her voice in the public square, and on top of the wall, she cries out, and at the city gate, she makes her speech. The writer is saying is that wisdom is ever before you, right? Wisdom is always trying to set you up to win. Wisdom is always making her appeal to you. But the problem with you and I is that we have to prioritize the right things, right? We got to prioritize the right things. In fact, if Dr. Gard, who I call her the illustration princess, right? She's amazing when she's preaching. You know, there's going to be some physical illustration, which I usually don't have, although I do have one today. But if she was up here talking about this prioritization structure, she would bring out here and there would be sand. Have you guys ever seen the illustration where it's talking about time management and there's an empty container and then there's sand, which is representative of like the smaller things, and then there's medium-sized rocks, which represent the medium things, then there's the big boulders that represent the important things, and then you're trying to get all three of those things into the container, and if you put in the sand first, the small things, and then you put in the medium rocks, and then you put in the boulders, it won't work, right? It won't all fit. But if you put in the boulders, and then you put in the medium-sized rocks, and then you put in the sand last, it works, right? It all gets in. And this is used to illustrate a very important truism of life, which is to say, not everything matters to the same degree, right? There are some things you got to get right. There are some things that you have to figure out, and I believe that finances are one of those things. The reason why I know that is because I meet with you, right? The reason why I know that is because what are the things that keep you up at night? What are the things you think about? What do you make decisions governed by? Right? These things truly do matter to us, and so because they matter so much to us, and they rightfully do, because the scriptures tell us wherever your treasure is, that's where your heart is. And so because these things matter, you have to get these things in alignment. Now, alignment is easy to underestimate even when you don't have it, right? It's just easy to underestimate. In fact, every time I go to take my car for an oil change, they always tell me that I need an alignment, right? They always tell you you need an alignment. Now, I don't really know when my car is in alignment or out of alignment. Like, I can't really tell when I'm driving it. I don't know the fruit of being in alignment or out of alignment. But what they always do is they always lift up my car, and then they show me what my tires look like on the side that I can't see. And they have literally showed my tires before, and the tires on the inside were literally fraying. Like, they were fraying and were about to, like, burst because I was out of alignment, right? If any of you go to the chiropractor, or if you have chronic back issues, you could speak to the importance of alignment. Any husband and wife in the room, there are times where probably as a married couple, you've been out of alignment, where you just feel like, man, we're just missing each other, and I feel like we're speaking a different language. There's something incredibly profound when you come into alignment. And so my main point today is this, is that an aligned budget can set you free of financial patterns that are making you a prisoner. An aligned budget can set you free of financial patterns that are making you a prisoner. Well, what are they aligned with? They're aligned with God's heart and practical wisdom for good stewardship. The scriptures say in 2 Peter chapter 2, verse 19, it says, "For a man is a slave to whatever has mastered him." So let's not be enslaved by a budget that is taking us to places that are harmful, stress-inducing, and soul-sucking. And so what I want to do is I want to give us kind of 7 thoughts, 7 ideas that are financial patterns that are making us a prisoner. I have 7 subpoints today, guys. 7 thoughts that are making us a prisoner in the area of our finances. Because I don't want to be verse 22. How about you? Right? I don't want God saying to me, how long will you who are simple love your simple ways? How long will you delight in mockery? Or how long will a fool hate knowledge? And so I want to go through those 7 things that I think are robbing us of the type of life that God has for us in the area of our finances. Here's the first one. It's really simple. It's one of the 10 commandments. Coveting. Coveting. And I'll give you a working definition of what coveting is. Coveting is an inordinate desire for what belongs to another. That's what coveting is. Coveting is this inordinate desire of longing for something that belongs to someone else. Now, here's what I find incredibly fascinating. God puts this in the Big Ten. Isn't that interesting? God puts coveting. Hey, don't have such a strong desire for your neighbor's stuff. Now, that's kind of wild to me, honestly. Because when I read the 10 Commandments, it's like, do not kill people and don't want your friend's stuff. It's kind of wild, is it not? Like, it's like, hey, don't worship other gods and don't want your friend's stuff. Like, it kind of seems disproportional. You know what I mean? It kind of seems like, man, I feel like one is here and the other one is kind of like, yeah, it's probably not good to do, but I don't understand why it's such a big deal. There's a reason why it's a big deal. And by the way, all of us have a little bit of this in us, right? This is why, you can be excited to purchase your new home. You ever been on realtor.com and you're looking for a house and then you find something and you're like, okay, cool, this is awesome. You purchased your home and then like 3 months later, you're back on realtor.com. And you're like, what is it? You ever been totally content with your car? Your car's fine. But then you get in your friend's new car, and all of a sudden you're like, my car's trash. My car is trash. It's just this weird thing in us. And so God knew we all have that in us, and he says, don't do that. And here's why. Because when we do that, in fact, it is us coming into alignment with the original sin. See, what was the original sin? Adam and Eve are in the Garden of Eden. And they're there. And the scriptures tell us that they would walk with God in the cool of the day. Now, that's just pretty, right? They just walk with God. They're just communing with God. Perfect alignment with God. Man, the ground is producing harvest. There's good things. They live in the Garden of Eden, and the serpent comes to Eve, and it's still not enough. Why? Because Eve is told a lie, which is to say, there's something that belongs to God that you don't have. There's something that he has that you should have. See, what the Lord knows is the Lord knows that he did not create us to be an animal. However, when we start coveting, we debase ourselves. When we start lusting and longing for other people's stuff and for other people's things, it takes us from the very special creation that God has, and it turns us into that which we are supposed to lord over, which is the animals. And he's saying, no, I did not create you to be an animal. I did not create you to have no self-control. I did not create you to lust after things every day of your life. I created you as a human being, fearfully and wonderfully, to walk with me and to have communion with me and to have relationship with me. I didn't create you to covet. And so how do we combat this? For every single one of these 7, I'm going to have a practical way to combat it. And here's the way we combat coveting is communicate gratefulness. Constantly communicate gratefulness. If you want to push away this lower nature that we all have, you got to constantly communicate how grateful you are, not for the stuff you don't have, but for the stuff you do have. I talk to myself a lot. Anybody else? Where are the people you talk to yourself a fair bit? Yeah. I talk to myself a lot. You want to know what 80% of me talking to me is? It's just communicating gratefulness. Honestly, like 80% of it is either me saying, man, I'm excited about this. I'm grateful for this. I can't wait for this. This is amazing. That's literally 80% of my conversation to me. You know why? Because I got to combat this thing. I got to combat this lower nature that looks at what other people have and goes, oh, that'd be nice. Instead of just being grateful for what God has given me. Here's the next one. Financial patterns that are making us a prisoner. This is a big one, especially in our current culture. Flaunting what you have. Flaunting what you have. Here's what the Apostle Paul said. He said, if I boast about anything, if I'm going to be a braggart about anything, what does he say? I boast about my weakness. You want to talk about a counter-cultural way of living. He says, hey, if I boast about anything, man, I boast about my weakness. Now, years ago, the guy has stopped running it and publishing new content, but there was an Instagram feed that got, relatively big in a small circle, maybe 5 years ago or so. I don't remember exactly, but it was this Instagram feed called Preachers and Sneakers. I don't know if you guys remember this. Many of you probably have never heard of it, but it was called Preachers and Sneakers. And what this person would do is they would post like preachers, up on the platform, and it would post pictures of like their shoes, and these really absorbent, shoes and things like that. And honestly, many of the guys were my friends, and that were on this thing. And when this was going on, honestly, I got mad at both parties. You ever do that? You ever get mad at everybody? Like I got mad at both parties. One, I got like annoyed with the guy that was like running this because I'm like, you got time? Like you got time to just like be posting about what other people are wearing? I'm like, bro, you got time, bro. That's wild. But then I got mad at also at some of my friends because I just remember thinking, guys, stop giving this bonehead content. Like stop posting stuff on your Instagram feed where it's like stop posting this stuff. Like stop making sure that like the photos have your expensive shoe. Like stop. Because you're just giving content. And then it got real insidious. And by the way, I think this applies not just to preachers. I think it applies to all of us. Because it got weird to where I even know some, preachers that were like, man, they were taking it a badge of honor if they made it on this thing. And I'm like, that's weird. And here's what you got to understand about Grace City Church. Listen, there's nothing wrong with having nice things. Have nice things. That's fine. Nothing wrong. Like, in fact, we are not a prosperity gospel, and we're not a poverty gospel. church. We're not. We believe God uses everybody. We believe God uses wealthy people, and God uses us when we're broke, and God uses everybody in between. In fact, just read the Bible, and he used very wealthy people like David and Solomon, and he used people that didn't have a lot, like the widow that came and brought her offering to the Lord. And he used people everywhere in between. I think sometimes in church, it's almost like we experience this classism in the church that gets really weird and really unhealthy and really unbiblical, by the way. No, we're not a prosperity gospel. We're not a poverty gospel. We're just, just be obedient to God. And again, nothing wrong with having nice stuff, but you and I know the difference than when we're enjoying nice stuff and when we're flaunting nice stuff. Now, hear me when I say this. We all have lines for what we feel is excessive. It's very subjective, right? What might be excessive for you in one particular area because you're not really into it is not excessive to another person in that area because they are. So the goal of this is not to use it as a club against each other. The goal is to use this to take self-inventory. Hey, how am I doing at enjoying something versus flaunting something? In fact, here's how we combat this idea. I do want to say this. This is why it's dangerous to flaunt, because whatever you tout or flaunt, you will feel the pressure to maintain. This is why flaunting is dangerous, because if you flaunt it in this season when you have it, what will you do in the next season when you may or may not have it? You will feel this pressure of going, oh man, I have to maintain this because this is what I have been putting out. And so how do we combat this? This is huge. Enjoy things more than you broadcast them. Enjoy stuff, that's fine. But be careful. I know people that are enjoying things, and they're not even enjoying it as much as they should, because while they're enjoying it, the main thing they're thinking about is, when can I get this post off, and how are the people that are in my same field going to feel when they see me flossing like this? How are my sisters going to feel when they see me living like this? You see, I think we just have to be careful that we're not living in a world that we're not enjoying because we're always thinking about, man, how's this post going to look? How can I get this off? So be careful of flaunting what you have. Enjoy what you have. Be careful of flaunting. Number 3, this is the other side of the coin, projecting what you aren't. That's a financial pattern that'll make you a prisoner. Projecting what you aren't. Now, guys, I just found something out like maybe 5-6 months ago. You ever find something out and it kind of gives you the sadsies? You ever find something out and you just get kind of sad? It makes you feel funny? Like, I found this information out about 6 months ago, and it made me sad. And I found out that there are places where you can rent private planes, not to fly in, but to take pictures in. We live in such a world of projection that there is a business model that thinks that there is value, that people care so much what other people think that they will rent a plane not to go in the sky, but they will rent a plane, bring a fake bag, like they're getting ready to go in that plane and fly, like they're rolling like that. And they'll go on the plane that stays on the ground. That stays on the ground and be like, that is the height of foolishness. That is the height of foolishness is to project, to want to project that you are at a place that you are not so bad, that you will do this. And a lot of us, we might not do it on that level, but we got to be careful that we're not doing it in the smaller ways as well. That we're not projecting something that we aren't. In fact, can I tell you this? your brain does not know the difference between taking the vacation that you can afford and taking the vacation that you can afford. Like the emotional return. Like when the vacation's over and you've been to the place and you go back to work refreshed after that week, your brain doesn't know, your emotions don't know the difference between you went to Europe and I couldn't afford that and I went an hour away and stayed in a hotel for 3 days with my family. Your brain doesn't know the difference. The only thing that knows the difference is your Instagram. It's the only thing that knows the difference. Listen, your romance brain with your spouse or your boyfriend doesn't know the difference if you go out to that restaurant that you can't afford or you go get Smoothie King and walk the lake. All it knows is I connected with the person I love. See, we got to be careful that we're not projecting things and finding ourselves being prisoners in the area of our finances because we're trying to do something that we can't afford. So here's a way to combat this. Win at what matters, and you won't have to dress up what doesn't. See, when you're really winning at life, you don't have to dress up the stuff that doesn't matter. Like when you got strong relationships, when you got character, right? When you feel like you matter to God and that you're walking with God, like, you know, when you're like crushing at work and you're just like, yeah, because I'm a good employee, because I work hard. See, when you're winning at what really matters, you don't got to dress up the peripheral stuff. You don't got to dress up the stuff that doesn't matter as much. So projecting what you aren't, we don't want to do that. Here's another financial pattern that's making us a prisoner. Number 4, allowing your expenses and debt to exceed your income. It's pretty basic, but we're doing it. Allowing your expenses and debt to exceed your income. Proverbs 22, verse 7. It says, the borrower is a slave to the lender. The borrower is a slave to the lender. Now, there are a few debt. There is some debt that I don't mind. This is going to get me in trouble with the Dave Ramsey crew. Right? And again, I think Dave Ramsey has a huge purpose, and his ministry has really helped a lot of people in the church. And I think there's a lot of us that are in a dire situation, and so we need the extreme kind of force against that is Dave Ramsey. But there's 3 types of debt that within reason that I don't mind. A mortgage payment, I don't mind that kind of debt. You know, most of us aren't trust fund kids that we can just buy a house cash. So we're going to have a mortgage. Student loans within reason. Now, again, if you get a degree in underwater basket weaving and then you want to how does this monetize? I think you're going to be in a tough spot. But I think that, ideally, right, that education, serves its purpose and you pay that back. There are cheaper ways you can do your education. Grace City College, holla at you, boy. Number 3, and then number 3, I don't mind a car payment within reason. I think within reason, I don't mind a car payment. But I think we got to be careful that we are not living our whole life with the wrong gap. In fact, I want to give it up for Reese one time. Come on, give it up for Reese. Reese is one of our Grace City College students. And I love Reese. Reese, come over here, stand on this side of me. Now, Reese, for this particular exercise, is not Reese. He is our expenses and our debt. Right, that is who he is. So for this exercise, we're not big fans of Reese. You know what I mean? We're not big fans of Reese. And now, in an ideal world, right, like I'm going to represent income. I'm going to represent our income. In an ideal world, this is what we want. We want our income to be out in front of our expenses and our debt. But oftentimes, what does happen is we're kind of living life and we're doing our thing. And, and all of our friends are going to Europe. Right, and all of our friends are doing like a 7-day thing in Europe. And I don't really have the money for that, but I do have a credit card. And we're like, you know what? I'm going to do this, and I'm going to spend this money, and I'm going to pay it off with my summer job during summer break. Never mind that I already have that money allocated. That's actually how I pay for college, is the money I make from summer break. But I'm going to allocate this, and then all of a sudden, my expenses and my debt are going to start to run away from me. Go ahead and stop. And then something unexpected is going to happen to my car. And there's going to be a $300 charge. I just wasn't really expecting, and my expenses and my debt are going to get out. And my income's right here. Just my income is what it is what it is. And now all of a sudden, I have this gap. And I have this gap that does not allow me to respond when God is speaking to me. So I can be in this room and I can go, man, I'm inspired by what God is doing, and man, I want to give for Heart for the House. But the problem is I have a reverse generosity gap. And so, man, I'd love to, but I can't. By the way, a lot of us have made poor decisions, and this gap has created, which is why we have to stay in our jobs that we hate. And so we're in jobs that we're being mistreated. We're in jobs that we hate. We're in jobs that has no upward mobility. But I got to stay here because I have this gap. I can't make a faith decision. I can't make an obedient decision. And so the goal is, come here, Reese. The goal, obviously, I know I'm preaching obvious stuff, but if it was obvious, we'd all do it. And so the goal is, hey, these are my expenses and this is my debt. Maybe you're paying off student loan, or maybe you have a car payment, or whatever the case may be. My goal is, man, this isn't moving, and oh man, I got a promotion. Oh man, this is another way that I can generate income. Oh man, here's a way. Oh cool, I was able to buy a second place, and now I'm Airbnb. Like whatever that is. And now you're going, oh man, now I have, again, I call this a generosity gap. Now all of a sudden, oh man, I feel led to pay for my friend's lunch. I can pay for my friend's lunch. Oh man, there's a police officer behind me getting coffee. I'm gonna pay for his coffee. Oh man, Heart for the House. Like, now there's a generosity gap. Oh, my friend lost their job. Hey man, here's a couple $100. Well, why? Because I have created and oriented a life around, thank you, around being generous. And can I tell you, listen, you can only be as generous as your wisdom allows. You can only be as generous as your wisdom allows. I think sometimes we think of generosity as a heart issue. No, generosity is a wisdom issue. I know a lot of you have the heart to be generous. You just don't have the wisdom to be generous. Your heart's in the right place. Your heart's right, but your wisdom is wrong. So we got to get your heart aligned with your wisdom. So how do we combat this? How do we combat this? Really simple. Create a realistic budget, get debt-free, and create a generosity gap. Create a realistic budget. Emphasis, realistic budget. Get debt-free and create a generosity gap. Number 5, I'll go through these last few pretty quickly. Number 5, financial patterns that are making you a prisoner. Oh, this is such a big one. Underestimating the work and wisdom that others have had to walk in to be where they are. Underestimating the work and wisdom that others have had to walk in to be where they are. See, this is why you have to be careful when you start hanging out with people in different age stages of life. You got to be careful, because up until post-college, all of your friends, or most of your friends, are within a 3 or 4 year age gap. Right? When you're like 21, if you're in college, you're like, all your friends are like 19, 20, 21, 22, 23. They're your friends. But then this weird thing happens when you get into the workforce. Because then when you're like 25 in the workforce, you got friends that are 42. Right? When you're 28, now it's like, oh man, I work with a guy and I'm friendly with that guy at work, and he's 24, and then this other guy and he's 52. You know what I mean? Like my best friends in Lakeland are like Tim Cox and Bill Mutz in their 60s and 70s. Those are my boys. Right? And when you get into this world, you have to be careful, because it will be easy to look at their life and go, oh man, that's what I want. Like I should have that now. And you're going, right, but they didn't have that when they were 24. They built up to that, and they worked up to that, and they worked up to that. Because what I found to be true about life is this: a lot of times we want the fruit of somebody's life, but are very disinterested in the seeds that they planted. We want the fruit of their life. Like this, I see this all the time with Christina. So Christina, she's a professor, college professor, and has been a college professor for how long? 18 years. Been doing college professor for 18 years. And I'm going to be honest, a college professor is a great gig if you can get it. It's a great gig. I'm not saying she doesn't work hard. I would never say that in front of a large group of people. She works hard. But there's schedule advantages to it, right? It's summer's out. There's a lot of schedule advantages to it. And so I've seen this happen so many times. A lot of people will go up to Christina and they'll go, I want to be a college professor. And again, you can imagine there's only so many of these spots. And by the way, people do this career for decades, right? It's not like you get in and get out. This is what they do. And they'll go, oh, I want to do that. And she's like, awesome. Where are you at education-wise? And they're like, I got about a year left until I get my associates. It's like, okay, it's awesome. Okay, cool. So you got to go back to school. And by the way, usually these are older people that are in the workforce, and the Christian go, okay, cool. You got to go back to school, and you got 3 more years to get your bachelor's. And then I did 11 years. She did 11 years of graduate studies to end up with 2 masters and a PhD. And then even then you got to get kind of lucky. You got to be in the right place at the right time. And it's funny, I'll hear people and I'll hear her talk about how many years of graduate school she's done to be in that position, and they quickly go from I want to do that to going, nah, I'm good. I'm good. It's like, right. This is the problem with you and I. I want the fruit of your life, but I don't want to plant the seeds that you planted. I want to look and I want to siphon out the best parts of your life, and I want to remove the hardest parts of your life. And how many of you know if you've been living for 5 minutes, you know that's not really how it works. That if you want the good, you got to take the struggle. If you want that side of it, then you got to take the other side of it. You can't underestimate what other people have done. So how do we combat this? Copy other people's wisdom and work ethic, not their lifestyle. Copy other people's work ethic. Copy their wisdom, not their lifestyle. There's people in our church that have done really amazing and have built awesome businesses, and that are getting on private jets, not to take photos in them, but actually go into the sky. Imagine that. And you know what I love? I love when people go, hey, I wanna learn from you, because there are things you can learn from people that have done well. But if you tried to copy their lifestyle without grabbing the seed that they have put into the ground, you're gonna find yourself in really dangerous positions. I wanna go on to the next one. Number 6, financial patterns that are making you a prisoner. Ignoring God's precepts and going your own way. Ignoring God's precepts and going your own way. I even wrote down, see the last 2 weeks' messages. Ignoring God's precepts and going your own way. 2 weeks ago, we talked about tithing, bringing 10% of your resources to God's house so it can be used for ministry. Last week, we talked about a generous life. And I got to be honest, I do get frustrated. I do get frustrated because God has precepts and God has ways, and I think a lot of times we just ignore them, but we still want the hand of God on what we're doing. It kind of reminds me, anybody that has more than one kid has experienced this, especially if they're anywhere near the same age. But sometimes our kids, they'll just be like getting physical with each other. They'll be like, just getting at each other but sometimes it always starts out playful, doesn't it? Right? So in fact, just the other day, it happens all the time, right? They're kind of pushing each other, or they're play wrestling, or Justice is dragging Addie by her hand on the ground, and Addie's cracking up, and I'm like, guys, like, hands to yourself, stop. And Addie's like, no, it's fine, and she's cracking up. And honestly, I'll tell them like 4 or 5 times, I'm like, guys, no, I know where this is going. I know it, and then after like 4 or 5 times, I finally just go, let's watch. And inevitably, what happens? 3 to 5 minutes later, I hear a blood-curdling cry, and somebody's like running to me. And you want to know where my empathy level is? On the ground, okay? And I'm like, I told you guys. But it gets to a point where I just go, okay, you want to do it your way? Do it your way. Hope you don't get hurt too bad. I wonder how many times we're going, God, bless my finances. God, please, like be in my finances. God, bless me. And God's like, tithe. Trust me with the tithe. Stop robbing from me. Be a generous person. And let me work. And we're like, And eventually God just goes, okay. Oh, hello. Don't go out, power. But it's this passage. How long will you love your simple ways? Like how long? You know what blows me away in church life and just life in general? I've been pastoring people for like 21, 22 years, and what never ceases to amaze me, and I say this all the time, is how committed people are to ways of living that aren't working. There are times where I just meet with people, and they're like, how do you and Christina do it? And I'll give them like mirroring, do this, do that, and they're like, my schedule and my boss and my blah, 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 blah. I'm like, keep going then. I wonder how many times we're like, God, this is hard. God's like, right, I want to rebuke the devourer. I want to invade that space, but you have to allow me to. So combating this, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but tithe, be generous, and trust God with your finances. Watch him work. And then finally this, I want to have the team come up. Number 7, financial patterns that are making us a prisoner. Letting wants drive your budget and not your values. Letting wants drive your budget and not your values. I heard a guy say one time, I thought this was brilliant. He says, your debt is a monument to your impatience. Your debt is a monument to your impatience. See, I'm a firm believer. You can have whatever you want. I'm a firm believer in that. Man, you want that nice house that you've been, like, you can have whatever you want. You just have to figure out how to get there. You just got to go, okay, what am I going to have to sacrifice? How am I going to have to work? How can I figure this out? But oftentimes we don't want that. We just want it now. Right? We just want it now. And God's like, no. There's a patience reality to it. Can't let your wants drive your budget. You got to let your values drive your budget. This is why whenever Christine and I are sitting down doing premarital with couples, or we're sitting down meeting with a couple that's struggling in the area of their finances, or if I'm meeting with anybody, sometimes I'm meeting with singles and they're struggling in the area of their finances, this is what I always tell them. What do you value when it comes to how you spend money? What matters to you? And by the way, I'm a firm believer in this. There's no necessarily right answers outside of generosity being at the top if you're a follower of Christ. But after that, I know people that care more about going on trips than they do about having a nicer home. So they'll sacrifice a nicer home to go on trips. I genuinely don't think there's a right answer to that. I think it's just like, hey, what do you value? So for example, Christina and I, we value experiences with each other and with the kids more than we value expensive clothes. So we don't spend, the amount of money that I know people, like friends, that they spend more money on their clothes. Like they'll wear a $500 t-shirt, and I'm like, I would never wear a $500 t-shirt. And I don't even mean that in a judgy way. I just don't value it. I just don't value it. I'd rather have an experience. And so can I suggest, start building your goals and start understanding, what do I value? See, one of the things that's interesting is I'll talk to 23, 24-year-olds, and this term will come up, and I'm not trying to be insensitive. Just let me get to the end. Let me just tell you what I'm going to say, is that, you'll hear the term like, there's an affordability crisis. Like, I can't buy a home because the market got too high. I'm like, the same people that will say that, who've been married for a year, just took a week and a half vacation to Europe. And I'm like, no, there's not an affordability crisis. There's a value crisis. And it's like, and it's all good. You're just telling me you value that more than that. I remember Christina and I didn't do a flying vacation the first 5 years of our marriage. We didn't like get on a plane and go anywhere. Why? Because we valued getting into the market. Right? We valued buying a house, and we didn't value that. So can I encourage you here? How do we combat this? When you go to build your budget, have a list of values that you're working from. Because most of us, we can't have it all. Life is trade-offs. Get over it. I'm smiling. Right? Life is trade-offs. Hey, if you want this, it's going to take this. See, there's power when you are financially free. You're always going to have financial realities. But there's power when you're financially free. You want to know how I know this? Because I remember where I was when Christine and I paid off our last bit of debt besides our mortgage and our cars. I remember where I was. When all the credit card debt and the student loans were done. I remember where I was. I remember we paid it off, and we were just like, it was like a 10,000-pound gorilla jumped off my back. That was a big deal. Right? Because here's what they don't tell you when you get married. This is actually a really exciting thing when you get married. You're largely unaware that you now have to pay for the experiences that your now current spouse had when they were 20. Like, guys, I've never backpacked Europe, but what Christina did when she was in college, and I got to pay for it. Isn't that awesome? So I just pretend I was there. But man, it was a game changer for us. And then, once we paid that off, over the next 3 years, we were able to put money away in savings. Just putting money away. And then 3 years after we paid that off, and for 3 years we've been saving, you know what God spoke to us? God said, it's time for you guys to plant a church. And you know what we didn't tell God? We didn't say, God, we have a lot of debt. I got to keep working this job. I need guaranteed income. Because I just can't make a financial decision like that. We got financially free. We were able to hear God. And then we were able to respond. And because of the savings we had, we knew that, okay, we could live for about 9 to 12 months with me not having a job to see if this church is going to go. And if it doesn't, then I'll get a job and we'll keep pastoring the church. But by the grace of God, we were set up to maneuver, hear God, and respond. So here's my prayer for us. This isn't one of those messages that you hear and then you feel better in like 4 days. But what I want to do is I want to start stirring you up to go, where could we be? Where could I be in 12 months? Where could I be? Where could I be if I actually built a budget around what I'm actually making now and let my debt and income get behind me? Where would I be if I made a hard run over the next 12 to 18 months to pay off some serious debt? Where would I be if I began to steward my finances under God's precepts and ways? What could we be looking at in 12 months? I promise you would feel dramatically different. So my prayer for every single one of us is that we would take this very practical message and we start taking steps towards it. Come on, let's stand to our feet, Grace City.